Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone, episode number 170 for the 21st of January 2012. Richard Saunders here with you from a very soggy, grey, drizzly, rainy, look up your thesaurus, day here in the Bay Area in California, the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm in the USA for a couple of weeks to visit family and friends and hopefully score some nice reports and interviews for the Skeptic Zone. But on this week's show, before I left Australia, I caught up with Ian Bryce, the chief investigator of Australian Skeptics. Now, he's been looking into a new sort of claim about cold fusion. Ah, yes. Remember cold fusion way back in the 80s, I think it was. Well, it seems that there is another cold fusion device doing the rounds, as it were. This is the device called the ECAT. ECAT, invented by somebody called Andrea Rossi in Italy. Now, there's an Australian distributor hoping to tell us all the benefits of this wonderful device, and Ian Bryce, on behalf of Dick Smith, who is a patron of Australian Skeptics, went up to the little town of Mullumbimby, up in northern New South Wales, to attend a talk all about this amazing device. What did Ian discover? To find out soon at the top of the show. And following that, we have a radio interview from 4BC, Radio 4BC in Queensland, where the hosts interviewed a very dear friend of the Skeptic Zone, Loretta Marron, also known as the Jellybean Lady. Now, Loretta is the only person in the history of Australian Skeptics, so over 31 years, who has been awarded Skeptic of the Year twice. Yes, in 2007 and 2011. And you'll find out why we hold Loretta in such high regard during the interview on Radio 4BC. I don't know if you can hear the rain falling outside, but it's sort of trickling down the gutter in big drops, and it's very cold outside, nice and crispy cold. I've just flown out of Sydney, of course, which is muggy, humid and hot. Now it's cold and wet here. Ah, the joys of international travel. And speaking of travelling, the Skeptic Zone's very own Dr. Rachie will be travelling to Canberra, the capital of Australia. And she'll be there on Wednesday the 15th of February to give a talk at the Optus Lecture Theatre, which is at the CSIRO Discovery Science Centre, Clooney's Ross Street in Canberra. She's going to be giving a talk, which is free, by the way. Free admission, free. Diagnosis by Dr. Google. That date again is Wednesday, the 15th of February, starting at 6 p.m. Now, if you go to www.skepticzone.tv and click the link on the show notes, you can find out more about Rachie's visit to Canberra. If you're in the ACT or near it, why not go along and see Dr. Rachie and hear her talk in person. And you can also visit the website of Canberra Skeptics, which is pretty easy to remember, www.canberraskeptics.org.au. Thank you to those listeners who in the past week have been chipping in to help our dear friend and reporter Maynard get to the amazing meeting in Las Vegas. I'm just looking on the website now, looking at Maynard's thermometer, the total of the money raised, and yes, it's sort of creeping up towards, must be nearly 1,500 by now. Of course, our goal is 2,500, so we're getting there. We are definitely getting there. And I can't wait to hear the reports that Maynard will be able to bring us all when he gets to Las Vegas. Yes, we're flying Maynard to Las Vegas. Yeah, I've never flown somebody to Las Vegas before. I hope I get to go too. Anyway, if you feel like helping out, please do. Please do. I'm sure we'll get to our goal. And you can visit the Skeptic Zone website, of course, and click the donate button for Maynard. And I must say thank you to Dr. Phil Plate, who was on last week's show. He helped us set a new record for the Skeptic Zone. His show, which was episode number 169, has almost twice as many downloads as our previous record. Thank you, Phil Plate. And welcome to all the new listeners to the Skeptic Zone. We've had so many guests over the 3 years or so that the Skeptic Zone's been going, so many interesting reports, but you can see a huge list of those at skepticzone.tv. Click the download comments link, and you can see a list of all the past Skeptic Zone episodes waiting for you to hear them. Well, as I hear more rain out the window, let me have a look. Oh, yes. Grey, overcast day, but there you go. I'm going to run upstairs. I'm going to have a nice hot drink of... what can I have a hot drink of? What do you have a hot drink of when you're in San Francisco Bay Area? What the hell? Hot chocolate. Oh, yes. While you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Now, listeners, a couple of weeks ago, you may well remember, I went for a walk with my good friend and chief investigator from the Australian Skeptics, Ian Bryce, and we were walking the dogs, in fact, and we were discussing the interesting things regarding negative and positive ions. Well, Ian Bryce is back with us today to discuss more interesting things, this time the hope and the promise of cheap and hardly polluting type energy. Hello, Ian.
Hello, Richard.
Now, you went on a mission. You went on a mission for our founder, Mr. Dick Smith, who's very famous here in Australia for the founding of the Australian Skeptics and the Dick Smith electronic chain and Dick Smith Foods. And he's flown around the world in a helicopter and had many records with his adventuring. But he was approached, I believe, to fund a new type of engine.
Yes, Dick's known for his support for environmental and humanitarian projects. So, of course, a new form of energy that was going to free us from climate change would be a most amazing thing. So,
your dogs agree, they're outside.
That's right, yes. Pardon the dogs. So, in this case, Dick was a bit surprised to be approached by this Australian representative looking for money for Rossi's so-called ECAT machine.
ECAT?
Yes, ECAT.
Right.
Energy Catalyzer.
Energy
is
Catalyzer.
His name, yes.
Right.
You can easily find that on the web if you do a Google. And the main difference from all the other things that the skeptics have investigated is that there's no less than 8 scientists who have come out giving some support for this device, whereas most of the other things we've investigated, like homeopathy and the anti-vaccination group, and the power band bracelets, you don't find any scientific support at all.
Right.
So given that there's some scientific support for this, Dick thought that the skeptics should look into it. So I went along to the meeting, meeting in Northern Australia.
Northern New South Wales. In fact, just a few days ago, you flew up to the little township of Mullumbimby, which is near Byron Bay, and just as a side note, I grew up in Mullumbimby.
How about that?
How about that? I spent most of my school years in Mullumbimby, so I remember that very well, which is very strange when I think about it, because it really is just a little country town. It's a lovely little country town, but it's just a little country town. It's not the place I would think that would be used to drum up interest in some sort of technology that could potentially change the world.
Yes, but what they have is retired money. There's a surprisingly large number of wealthy people there who have retired or prefer a living style that's away from the big smoke, among the beautiful rolling hills and hinterland there.
Yes, yes.
And there have been quite a few different schemes and scams associated with the area. and it's well known for people who, politely you could say, people who feel very much in tune with the Earth. In fact, I got some brochures when I was up there. There's the Festival of Earth Frequencies coming up.
Really?
Earth frequencies. I asked them what that was about, and they referred me to Nikola Tesla and his experiments with the Earth frequencies.
Oh, he'd be rotating in his grave if he knew all the times people bring up his name. Well, I remember that area of Australia, northern New South Wales. It was a big centre in the early 70s, especially for the hippie culture. I remember
and
that.
Still is.
And still is, yes.
In fact, my host drove me around in a 1988 car painted with flowers and love and peace signs.
Oh, I see.
Surviving from those days.
Wow.
And we got a good idea of the demographic there. I gave an outline of the skeptics when I got to give my presentation and the things they've investigated recently. We mentioned the power band and those things. And when I got to the anti-vaccination, the Australian Vaccination Network, they're really anti-vaccination, you should have heard the hoots from the audience.
And they weren't happy, huh?
Someone walked out. Yes,
Good heavens.
They weren't able to tolerate that.
So you were flown up there on behalf of Dick Smith to check out the bona fides of this ECAT. And you were given the chance to actually address the meeting, which was, I think that was very good that you were given that chance.
I must say, yes, it was quite courteous of my host, the prospective representative, to allow me to share the table with him and give my point of view. It was quite open, although he did get a bit worried as it went on.
Well, I was just about to come to that as it happened, and I've looked at your notes from the presentation you gave. Maybe he would have been somewhat disappointed by your presentation because it wasn't glowing, was it? That's right.
Yes, he and a lot of his colleagues were saying things like, come on, just invest in it. What are you worried about? We've got all these scientists saying it's okay. We're over that. We want to work out the finances.
Yeah.
And this guy had quite a scheme set up for his non-profit organisation, which seemed to be handling a lot of money in his business plan for a non-profit organisation. And there were profits to be made left, right and centre, we were assured. So I put a bit of a break on that, and when it was my time to speak, I said, well, hang on a bit, let's slow down and take a step backward from all this. Let's firstly find out whether it's true.
Yes.
Before we start working out the business plan and the investment strategy.
If this engine is true, as claimed, Ian, and we're not joking about here, it would seriously revolutionise our society, wouldn't it?
It totally would. A totally new field of physics and energy production. Climate change would be solved overnight, and our living standard could go on climbing because we could produce more goods and recycle more goods very easily.
Yeah. So it really is a bold claim that these people were making.
Yes. So on the other hand, so that's one reason that Dick wanted to invest in it. If it's going to be of such benefit to mankind, we'd all like to be part of it. But the other side of the coin was that if it turns out to be a scam, to be false, then we don't want people wasting their money on it, because that money could otherwise have been invested in things that are known to benefit humanity and save the climate. For example, good old bog standard solar power.
Yes. Yes,
or
absolutely.
Better ways of energy storage overnight. You've got
more advancement of the technologies involved in solar energy. So year by year, I imagine we're winkling better efficiency out of these cells.
But if you're going to spend millions on this scheme that turns out to be wasted, you'd be better off spending the millions on improving what's going to work.
Yeah.
So these motivations led Dick to ask me to go and assess the situation up there, and I'm pleased I got the chance to address them as well. So I've developed a little scientific tool called the three-legged stool test.
Yes, I was just about
these things.
I made a little note to ask you about that, because I do remember, many years ago, in 2004, I think it was, at a convention that here in Sydney, you spoke about the three-legged stool. And I remember thinking at the time it was a very good little benchmark for when you're investigating something, especially free energy devices. So for the benefit of our listeners who are sitting on their four-legged chairs at the moment, or whatever they're doing, how does the three-legged stool work?
Well, it says that if you're assessing some new claim regarding a new type of science or technology or healthcare or something like that, there's three tests you should give it. One, is there a theory that makes it possible, at least?
Right.
And two, are there measurements that show that it's actually happening? And 3, does the claimant have any sort of credibility that you should believe what they're saying?
Right.
So we went through this case according to those 3 categories and basically found out that it's falling short on all of those. So to cut it short, therefore, I recommended to Dick that he doesn't invest in this.
Right. And that energy could no doubt be used to fuel the plane that's just flying overhead, which is exciting the dogs. It's all happening here at Ian's place, everybody. Oh, there we go. It's gone away. So yes, it's great because you look at the 3 major points, and I think I love the way you put it. If one of the legs isn't working, the stool's going to fall over, right?
And if it's got 3 broken legs, then it's probably not even worth considering further.
Yeah. So how in this situation, how did the 3 legs stack up or not?
Well, we can go through them in a bit more detail.
Yeah.
The first one is the credibility. Looking at Rossi's history.
Now, this is the guy in Italy.
Yes, right? The guy in Italy.
The inventor,
yes.
I imagine. Yes.
The local representative doesn't have any knowledge, really, of whether it's valid or not. So let's turn our focus to the Italian origin of it.
Yeah.
So Andrea Rossi has been in prison twice for various charges to do with environmental fraud. He's had a previous invention called a thermoelectric generator, which he sold 29 devices for evaluation, and none of them worked.
Oh dear.
Not a very good record. He has apparently stated false academic credentials, which he doesn't have. He calls himself a physicist, when his only degree is in philosophy.
Oh.
And lots of problems like that. So that's not a showstopper, but it does,
I agree.
give a negative influence.
It doesn't bode well. It doesn't mean he can't have invented something wonderful, but it's not a good start, one might say.
Exactly. Yeah. The second way is the theory. Rossi's basing it on, he thinks it's cold fusion, or says it's cold fusion, which we'll remember back in the 1980s with Fleischmann and Pons, has never been reproduced.
Yeah, that long ago, 1980s.
Yes, indeed. So since then, the field has been renamed Low Energy Nuclear Reactions, LENR, and broadened, and there's quite a body of research in it now, very much on the fringes of science.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing? Well, no one's actually shown that there is, and the theory is based on quantum theory of condensed matter and electrons that have become very heavy so they can orbit closer to the nucleus of a hydrogen atom. And this has never been observed, and it's doubtful that it exists at all. But there is a field of study there, and there are published papers on it. However, Rossi's been able to get any of his own papers published in any scientific journal, so he created his own so-called scientific journal called the Journal of Nuclear Physics. And he's the only one who writes for it, so that's a bit odd.
Maybe he peer-reviews it himself.
So there's no theory to support it.
Right.
What we do find now the third leg of the stool is experiments, and there's a fair bit more detail available on the experiments than the other areas. So I went through the claimed about 5 different demonstrations during 2011 that he's reported, and in each of those we find out that there's a considerable doubt about the measurements. For example, there was one case where his demonstration was observed by 2 Swedish nuclear physicists.
Right.
This is quite remarkable, and they jointly published a travel report which said that the results as they saw them tend to support the idea that there was a production of energy going on, more than you could get from chemical reactions. So this is one of the groups of scientists that give some support to it. In fact, one of them used to be the chairman of the Swedish Skeptics, which is a sister organisation to Australian Skeptics.
Yeah.
So we hold his opinion in high regard, of course. So what I looked at was I reverse engineered the charts that were provided by Rossi and carried it to another level of analysis, not taking it at face value, and given the temperature reports of Rossi's reactor. Or perhaps I should stop for a moment and describe what's happening. Rossi's got a...
Yes, how does the machine seem to work, Ian?
Okay, well, the basic device is an L-shaped copper device. It looks like a set of plumbing that you ordered from the hardware store and soldered together with a torch.
Yeah.
And
it's not very big, is it?
That's right, about as big as a shoebox.
Wow.
The first branch contains a little so-called nuclear reactor with nickel powder, or nickel flakes and hydrogen in it, and an unknown catalyst which is supposed to react once you warm it up. The water flows down it and gets hot. Then there's a vertical chimney whose purpose is to collect the steam, and that goes out a hose.
So in the end, this machine is designed to generate steam to drive a turbine and create the power. Yeah,
it's a bit of a mystery why Rossi has never harnessed the steam coming out for any useful purpose, which means that you have to do the efficiency calculation based on two unlike things, which is always a bad sign.
Right.
So there's cold water going in and there's some steam coming out.
Okay.
So in this case, there's a couple of problems with the experiment, and one is that looking at the temperature of the water coming out over time, which the data has been provided in full, to me indicates that it's not so much in accordance with the nuclear reaction as it is with something else. Because, for example, there's 300 watts of electrical power going in at the start, and the rate that the device is heating up at indicates that there's 750 watts being dissipated in the device from the start. This is before the nuclear reaction kicks in while it's still cold. So that's 750 watts, not 300 watts. Bit of a puzzle.
Yeah.
And if it was a pure nuclear reaction, that must already have kicked in at only 28 degrees C. This would be quite scary, because it means your reactants could start reacting at room temperature on a hot day, which would be a bit of a worry.
Yeah.
Another thing is that after a while, the power suddenly goes up to, the apparent power goes up to 1700 watts from 750.
Wow.
More than double.
Yeah.
Instantly.
Yeah.
Change in slope of the temperature curve. And this is very odd that a nuclear reaction would kick in so suddenly and double so suddenly. And a bit later on, the device cools down for 20 seconds.
I saw that in your chart. Yes, it's this strange dip, isn't there?
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's a bit odd to think that a nuclear reaction would suddenly decide it's going to stop, wait for 20 seconds, and then resume at a higher level, even though it had cooled down in the meantime.
Yeah, right.
So the theory, the hypothesis that it's a real nuclear reaction looks very doubtful to me. And to me it's more suggestive of someone fiddling with the electrical input.
Right.
If, for example, they started off with 750 watts, not the stated 300, left it there for a couple of hours, then connected it to a higher voltage so it produced more power, 1700, and then for 20 seconds they disconnected it from that voltage supply and reconnected it to a higher voltage supply again, that would fit the data much more better, I think. So I'd say the alternative hypothesis is better supported than the nuclear reaction one.
Yeah.
That's only my opinion, and I must give the disclaimer that if more data comes,
well, of course,
then I can always change that view.
So it sounds to me, though, if for the sake of argument, if this guy has invented something which works as he claimed, it would be really, really dangerous, don't you think?
You haven't heard half of it yet, Richard. This is a little device.
Right.
The next demonstration was on a much bigger device. It weighed 98 kilograms.
Oh, wow.
Instead of 4 kilograms.
It's more than me. It weighs more than me.
That's right. And you're not going to believe this, but if you're to believe what he told the observers and reported, he turned on the heating device, which is supposed to start the nuclear reaction, 2 hours before it filled up with water. So he's got the electrical heating going on while the water's being pumped into the chamber. So imagine starting your car engine and taking 2 hours to fill a radiator. It would cook and fry itself.
It would get very hot, wouldn't it? Yeah.
And given that Rossi's claiming there's a nuclear reaction there, imagine, can you remember what happened to 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl and
not good.
Fukushima when they ran out of cooling water?
No, it wasn't good.
Not good.
Not good.
So if this is really a nuclear reaction, I'd be really a little bit worried about Rossi's approach to the whole thing.
And I was interested to see in your note concerns you were raising, if concerns is the right word, about the lack of perceived radioactivity in the steam or the water.
Yes. My physics degree had a little bit of nuclear physics in it. But I understand that if a real nuclear reaction is going on at a high enough level to produce power, then all of the things around it will show some evidence of radioactivity afterwards, which needs to be guarded against, and you've got waste to dispose of.
Yeah.
When Rossi's running this device, he holds the output hose in his hand, admittedly a gloved hand to protect from the heat, and he lets it run down the sink.
Oh, no. Maybe the Italian authorities might like to hear about that.
So that's not another good indicator about whether there's a nuclear reaction going on.
No, it doesn't. No, I hope not. In this case, I hope not. If it is, I hope that he's doing something better with the water. Now, okay, so you were up there at the meeting, and you were able to tell the audience. And how many people actually came along?
About 70.
Wow,
that's quite a lot.
Quite a lot. Tell the audience, from your point of view, what you thought of the data so far and the engine and what have you. How was the reaction then, apart from the ones who walked out when you mentioned the vaccination network? How was the reaction then from the audience?
Well, when the Australian host, Sol, tried to shut me up by saying he thought we'd run out of time and we should leave room for questions, someone yelled out, "Let him finish, I want to hear what he's got to say." So It was a good sign.
Yeah.
And they did hear me out to the end. But there were quite a few questions. The questions were about a third to do with the science of it and about 2/3 to do with the finance. So I guess the people questioning the science, we had got through to them that there was something wrong with the science. And the people questioning the finance had got over the science and were more interested in how their money was going to be distributed. So it's a bit of a mixture there. But I did get a bit of an idea of the demographic we were dealing with, because I asked them, I'd like to do a little survey here. If you believe that the laws of physics as we understand them are correct, can you put your hand up? And about 10% put their hand up.
Wow.
And then I said, well, and now those who think the laws of physics as we understand them are completely wrong, put your hand up. And about 20% put their hand up.
Good heavens.
And then someone said, look, I think I can speak for most of us here. What we believe is the laws of physics as we understand them might be valid, because we see things around working, but they're not complete. There's more things to be discovered, and that could explain these things. So there you go. That was the current paradigm, which is a little bit from the heart of Sydney, when I give talks here. They're very much hard-nosed skeptics and scientists.
Especially if they've come along to this meeting with the hope of finding something wonderful to invest their money in. And with a mixture of motivations, I would imagine there would be some there who had the eye for the investment opportunity to make money. And I'm sure there were plenty of people there who wanted to invest in something that they thought could seriously help our society and our planet.
Yes, that thread's very much present. All or nearly all of the people want to do something to help save the planet. They feel very much in tune with the earth, living often among the hills and along their mud brick houses and so forth in their little patch of rainforest.
Yes.
So that's a quite positive thing to say.
Well, I mean, a lot of people's hearts are in the right place, which is sometimes why it's hard for them to hear or accept something like the skeptical point of view, which would say, yes, wouldn't it be wonderful if this was the case? However, we can look at this in somewhat the cold, hard light of day and find it's probably not cold fusion at all.
That's right. I would like, if we have some overseas listeners from not in Australia, I would like you to do me a favour. Perhaps you could do a little search to find out whether Rossi's ECAT is being promoted in your own country. And if you find out anything, even a negative result, could you let us know? Perhaps you could send an email to the Australian Skeptics, which is nsw@skeptics.com.au.
That's it, folks. If you're wherever you are in the world, have a look around, Google away. You might have heard something. Rossi and the ECAT energy device, has it got an
energy catalyzer?
Energy catalyzer. And you can contact Ian at that address he just mentioned. That's nsw@skeptics.com.au, and let him know if you've discovered anything.
If you're interested in a bit of further information, the most comprehensive website from a skeptical point of view that I've found that mentions Rossi's device is ESOWatch, ESOWATCH. If you do a little Google, you'll find ESOWatch, and they do have many skeptical topics they investigate, including a very long article on Rossi's ECAT.
Great. Well, Ian, this is just one of the long line of energy devices you've been looking into over something like 30 years.
30 years, yes.
We remember way back in decades past there were various fuel polarizers. There were various pool cleaning devices that you've been looking into, and cars that run on water and all sorts of things.
In fact, that was brought up at the Mullumbimby meeting.
Was it?
Someone said, "What could I tell them about the hydrogen-powered car that Joe Bjelke-Peterson was?"
Wow.
So I told them a bit about that, and I told them that was, I think, the first article I wrote for the Skeptic back in about 1981.
And after all these years, over 3 decades of investigating these things, we've still yet to find the Holy Grail, haven't we? The pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is very elusive.
That's right. Maybe instead science is as we find it, and the world is as it appears to be, and the way we need to save the planet is to use less energy and find renewable energy.
You've heard it here first, folks. Ian Bryce from Australian Skeptics, our chief investigator. Great to have you back on the Skeptic Zone again. And, well, listeners, if you know of a free energy device or a wonderful energy-saving device, let Ian know. Ian, thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
This is Ben Radford. I'm Deputy Editor of Skeptical Inquirer Science Magazine, author of 6 books, including Tracking Chupacabra, and you can find out more about me at benjaminradford.com.
Hi, this is Tim Farley. You probably know me from whatstheharm.net, a catalog of the real-world harm caused by lack of critical thinking. But that's not my only project. I present at Skeptic events. I post a daily Skeptic history fact on Twitter and Facebook. And I blog about using new techniques on the internet to advance skepticism. Come over to skeptools.com and check out my latest ideas. But first, enjoy the rest of the Skeptic Zone.
But Demoyd, you're a skeptic, aren't you?
Oh, it depends on what. What are you talking about? But I am, and people that talk to the afterlife and forecast the future, yeah, I'm a total sceptic on that kind of thing.
What about alternative medicines?
Sometimes, yeah, the old magnetic mattresses, that had me a bit puzzled there for a while.
Well, Loretta Marron is the Australian Skeptic of the Year for the second time, and she is continuing her campaign against unproven alternative medicines and practices, and she's also the inaugural Chief Executive Officer of Friends of Science in Medicine. She joins us now. Hi, Loretta.
How are you?
Very well. Now, you've had a long-running battle to expose fraudulent claims and things like that. Why did you start your campaign against alternative medicines?
Well, I think it was when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and that was 2003, and thanks to modern medicine, I'm still here. And my background is physics and computers, so medicine was never of interest to me, except I've always eaten healthy and been quite athletic and all the rest of it, as most of us are.
Yes.
But once I walked through that cancer door, I went to a whole new world, and it was, you know, voodoo and witchcraft and
really?
The most incredibly vulnerable people I've ever seen, just sitting there perched on the edges of their chairs listening to information that was just so wrong.
Like, for example,
whereabouts was that information being dished out?
Well, the sad thing is it was at my local breast cancer support group.
Right, okay.
And I went along there to listen to the local friendly naturopath. And these are lovely people, right?
Yeah.
They're very nice, friendly girl. And she started and just would not stop attacking doctors, you know, saying they're owned by the drug companies. And then she attacked everything you ate, you know, no dairy, no alcohol. Well, that was a bit of a tough one. Don't eat anything white, eat everything purple. Tin food has no nutrition. Microwave food has no nutrition. Just went on and on and on. And then she started to sell product. She held up a big container of soy. And one woman, now these women have just been treated for cancer, and they're bald and they've got tubes hanging off them. And one woman said, oh, my oncologist said I shouldn't be having too much soy because of the type of cancer I have.
Right,
and she said, take any advice from your doctor with a grain of salt.
Oh, no, really?
I've done 4 years nutrition and they've only done 12 hours or something like that. And I said to her, I was taking notes. Because one thing skeptic is about, we're all skeptics, but you're not going to get an electrician around without checking out that he's got some qualifications, are you?
No.
But people will turn up to some alternative clinic, and one guy had a swimming certificate on the wall. I mean, it looked impressive, but I didn't even notice that, and someone said, that's a swimming certificate. So we don't check their qualifications. We look at the front of the shop and we walk in. And, so...
But with a cancer sufferer, it's,
They're looking for anything.
You're desperate.
Oh, that's right. And as I say, these ladies invited this girl back twice. So I took all the notes and I went home and I looked up what she said because I thought, well, this is interesting. I didn't know that. And I found out pretty well all of it was wrong. And I thought, these women, now, if you've got cancer, the last thing you want to be doing is going on a restricted diet.
Yeah.
You should be eating healthy. You shouldn't be giving up all your favourite foods. And you're allowed an occasional glass of wine for medicinal purposes, of course.
Do you think they were giving some of the patients false hope that if they tried this other thing, they'll be cured?
This particular girl wasn't, but I have actually gone to 2 practitioners. The Current Affair invited me to go undercover, and I actually I went to Mackay, a woman who was putting dilute bleach into people's veins, telling them that it would cure their cancer.
My goodness.
And I came home because I couldn't say a thing, because my job was to actually somehow show it on film. You know, you've got the handbag with the camera in it. And I came out with shingles after that. But I got home and I had to ring up my oncologist and say, what do I do? And she said, report straight away. And they did shut the woman down. Yeah. And this woman was, this poor patient was dying. And I'm listening to the practitioner saying, oh, yes, you can, it's got rid of your brain tumour, now it's working on your breast tumour, now it's doing all this, and how great. Dear. And the woman's saying, yes, I can feel it. And
paying heaps of money for the service?
Oh, $3,000.
Oh.
Heavens above. Now, the Friends of Science in Medicine, the Skeptic of the Year, 2 years running now, and for the second year, it's your campaign against a different element of medicine, and it's fundamental chiropractic.
Well, what happened is, chiropractors, I documented 50 New South Wales websites. I always do New South Wales because it's close to Canberra. Mm-hmm. And I figure it's close to the politicians. And every single one of them, and this was I found 51, and every 51 of them on the web claimed that chiropractic could be used to treat ADHD, asthma, allergies, bedwetting, colic, and ear infection. And some of them even claimed it was an effective alternative to vaccination. This is just spinal manipulation. And this is what they call fundamentalist chiropractic. And then I documented 30 websites in Victoria. They all said the same, and a whole bunch, 10 I think in Queensland, and they said the same again. And I thought, why are they all saying this? These are not bad people. And I realised they were teaching it in the universities. And I tracked down to RMIT, and they had a paediatric chiropractic clinic. And I tracked down one of the people teaching in it, and of course she said she teaches the students how to treat ADHD, asthma, allergies, bedwetting and colic. It's all total nonsense. That's fundamentalist chiropractic. That's not the good guy that looks after your back. He's fine. But it's when they go to the dark side and start to make these claims on very vulnerable parents. Can you imagine you've just had a baby, you go in there and he says, oh, don't vaccinate because your child's going to get autism, and I have an effective alternative. So I actually wrote a report to the health minister, and that went global. That got mentioned in the British Medical Journal. And I asked them to shut the chiropractic clinic down and investigate chiropractic in Australia. And, of course, they did nothing. They refer it on. But even so, at least that way it brought it out. And suddenly paediatricians came out, and very good chiropractors came out offering to support me, which when I got one from a chiropractor, I thought I was done for. He said, I'll offer you help. He said, I don't want us to be seen like this. I want us to be seen the non-surgical back specialists, not all this woo-woo stuff. And then I found they were running courses teaching practicing chiropractors how to enlist local nurses to get most of their businesses to be children and babies. This is manipulating newborn babies. And they run seminars. These people, the chiropractors, are not vaccinated. They don't have to be vaccinated. And they would be running seminars after hours to tell the mothers, the new mums, and these poor women are so precious, and their babies are so precious, mixing with all these other babies. And we've got rampant whooping cough. My niece's wife just had a baby. She was terrified the first 6 weeks her baby would catch whooping cough because she lives in a low vaccination area. Fortunately, it didn't. Those are 6 weeks she should have been just enjoying motherhood.
I can imagine.
Babies are dying. Yeah, so I found out the guy that ran this course, he stood down from RMIT and he moved to Queensland and is now setting up the Central and Queensland University course, chiropractic, under a Bachelor of Science, mind you, starting this year. So I alerted the professors that this was happening. So they then enlisted 34 of their colleagues and wrote a letter to the Central Queensland University asking them to rethink this degree. They then realised that 19 of our 39 universities are running courses akin to witchcraft and voodoo, often masquerading as science. There's a lot of money in it.
Yeah, but I can't understand that there's controls that these charlatans are out there, trying to make money out of basically nonsense.
No control. I put a complaint in against a Chinese practitioner claiming he could cure cancer on his website. Without a patient, there's nothing they can do. It won't hold up in court. So they just said, look, it's just his opinion, nothing they can do. So there are no controls. So the one thing I've tried to do is ask the TGA to cancel devices, for example, that you can go to your local natural therapist for a consultation, which you can claim off your health fund. And the next thing, you'll be on a machine, which is a high-tech wizardry that's going to diagnose all that ails you, your allergies, your nutritional deficiencies, and you'll stagger out the door with all these bottles of things, because that's what they make their money on, is selling all the pills and potions. And as I say, you don't get better straight away. They say, look, come on back. So people keep coming back for treatments that don't work, spending an awful lot of money they don't have. And they also know them on a first-name basis. I hear them saying, oh, Danny, my kinesiologist, or Storm, my naturopath. Well, your doctor can't do that. The doctor's in and out in 6 minutes, and if they're longer than that, then they're investigated by Medicare.
Yeah, I can imagine people have probably tried to run you out of town.
Oh, well, not so much. I try to work from a basis of evidence. Like if you said to me I went to an acupuncturist and gone 6 sessions, I will send you the research so you can make an informed choice. It's not about what I think, even though I do have an opinion. After a couple of drinks, I'll certainly do it.
And also, Loretta, I know people who, they won't take their kids to the doctors. They're always forever running to the naturopath.
Well, there's some good naturopaths out there as well.
I think that I've been to naturopaths, so, I go every now and again. But I sometimes think, look, if it's a cold and the child's not getting any better, go to the doctor.
Traditional medicine.
That's right. Well, a naturopath can give you good nutritional advice.
Yeah.
See, they come out of university. This is what really stuns me. There's some really great courses that they attend, different subjects. But still, when they come out, the temptation is there's not a lot of money in just giving advice. And these people that sell these machines, they're overseas machines, so they've got European Union certificates. The TGA, the Therapeutic Goods Administration, the regulator, is obliged to take the machines. So the sponsors of these machines will contact the naturopath saying, look, here's the machine for $25,000. You can get $100,000 a year on this machine. They'll show them how, and they'll finance the machine. Well, if you're a naturopath and you think, wow, this is all legitimate.
Easy money.
Yes, I will do it. And how good am I to my patients that I'm offering them all these diagnostics? And really, all they are is high-tech wizardry.
Yeah. It's like the teeth whitening machines they've got out there as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and part of my problem is I can't often get patients to come forward who have been treated badly for cancer because they're dead.
Yeah.
You look at Steve Jobs, Apple CEO, he went on homeopathy. It didn't kill him, but he was quite savable at the beginning. He was potentially curable. He had a unique type of cancer. But even he admitted he'd made a mistake.
Okay.
And that's the tragedy of it. It's bad enough when, that's the worst thing. If people can be saved and they delay. One of my very good friends, this was diagnosed a year or two before me, so I didn't know much about the cancer, went on wheatgrass. This is up the Sunshine Coast. They had diagnosed him accidentally with an X-ray, and it was a tiny lesion about the size of a 5-cent coin, and they could have cured him. No, he died because he went on the wheatgrass, and even all the way he's telling me he's cured. And by then I was diagnosed, and I thought, well, that's good. I don't understand it. And, of course, then he died a few months later. And I just have story after story, usually from families, loved ones, saying, my sister went and she did this and I went along with her and it was really cruel, bones start dissolving and all sorts of, as this cancer spreads and they're still going to the homeopath and all that. But that was it. The homeopath told me he could cure me. And this was one at Algester. He could cure, that was undercover again. And he could cure me of cancer with homeopathy, with, the memory of a flower and some other, and also a cancer cell, the memory of a cancer cell. And so we were able to take those products with us. But this is a guy telling me not to have cancer treatment, because I could legitimately say I've been diagnosed with breast cancer. What can you do for me? And that's, because I'm not very good at lying. So, and that's why they like me to go undercover. But I think my cover could be blown now.
I think
it might be, Loretta. Hey, listen, thanks for talking to us. We'll talk again soon,
My website at www.healthinformation.com.au. That's health information, one word. It doesn't sell anything, doesn't advertise, just over 400 very good links so people can have a look.
And you've got some interesting followers there too, supporters like Professor Ian Fraser and at least 30 Order of Australians. So, well, thanks for talking to us. We'll talk again soon, Loretta.
Good on you. Thank you.
Hey, Loretta Marron there, the inaugural Chief Executive Officer of Friends of Science.
Have you heard about QED? The exciting Skeptical Conference, 10th and 11th of March 2012.
Quite exciting days.
You're probably wondering, why should I go to QED?
Quasi-existential dilemma.
We'll have the investigator and legend Joe Nickell.
Quite extraordinary detective.
Alternative medicine expert Edzard Ernst.
Quacks endure difficulties.
Monsters, werewolves and lucid dreaming from Deborah Hyde.
Quirky, eerie demons.
Massimo Polidoro, head of the Italian Skeptic.
Questo egregio dottore.
David Aranovich and conspiracy theories.
Quite easily debunked.
Secular campaigner Mariam Namazi.
Quell equality detractors.
Sarah Anglis will show us how to play the theremin with robots.
Quivering electronic devices.
Ufologist Ian Ridpath.
Quiz extraterrestrial details.
Professor Steve Jones and why creationism is nonsense.
Quiet and evolution deniers.
Podcaster and spoonbender Richard Saunders.
Questions ESP demonstrations.
Author Ophelia Benson.
Queen existentialist debater.
And we'll have comedy from Robin Ince and guests.
Quality entertainment, definitely.
Tickets are £89 and they're going fast, so hurry.
Queue everybody directly.
Could you cut that out? You can get your ticket from qedcon.org.
Quote event domain?
Marsh, seriously, if you don't stop that, I'm going to have to hurt you.
Quickly end discussion.
Come to QED Manchester.
Question, explore, discover.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Skeptic Zone. Now, to whet your appetite, there has been more developments in Ian Bryce's investigation into the ECAT cold fusion type technology. It's a little bit under wraps now, Ian's further investigations. As soon as we can, we'll be telling you more about this fascinating story, this interesting investigation. So look out for that. And look out for next week's Skeptic Zone, where we will be visiting the National Centre for Science Education, which is in Oakland, not far away from where I am at the moment, and to talk to our dear friend Dr. Eugenie Scott about her efforts and the Centre's efforts into helping preserve science education by fighting the attempts by creationists to insert their drivel into the American school system. Can't wait for that. Going to be visiting that centre in a few days. Well, I think it's time for another hot chocolate. Yeah, why not? And thank you once again for listening to this week's episode of The Skeptic Zone. Until next week, this is Richard Saunders signing off, looking for my rowboat, signing off from the Bay Area, San Francisco, USA.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.